Hi, y'all. We're excited to have you here and want to welcome you to Coding for Beginners, Rock, Paper, Scissors, Code. My name's Corey Mickelson, and I am the Marketing Events Coordinator here at Flatiron School. A big part of my job is hosting these free introductory workshops, like this evening's event, to give everybody an opportunity to see some of our instructors and get more of a feel of the Flatiron School experience. I also host a series called Tech in 20, where we take 20 minutes to discuss hot topics within the tech industry, as well as some panel events throughout the year. So a quick reminder, we're going to be using the chat function as our main source of communication. I'll be moderating. So if you have any questions, drop them in there and we will answer them as they come up. Make sure that little blue button at the bottom is from host and panelist to everybody so we can all chat together. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our host for the evening, Paul Gayad. He's one of our lead software engineering instructors. Go ahead and take it away, Paul.
Thanks, Corey. Just make sure you see what Sean said in the chat. But yeah, hey everybody, I'm Paul Gayad. I teach software engineering at the Flatiron School. And we teach JavaScript ES6, which is the latest version of JavaScript. We teach HTML, CSS, React, which is a JavaScript library that was invented by Facebook and makes front-end development much easier. The front end is what the user experiences and sees on a web page. And then on the back end, we teach Ruby on Rails, which is a very popular back-end language for interacting with the server and the database. Today, we will just be concerned with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. Let me share my screen. So I'm on replit.com. I have an account, and what you can do on here is really code in like any language. It's a really cool sandbox, as we would say, just to play around in with code. In technical interviews, you are given kind of a sandbox to work out algorithms that solve the problems that they give you in those interviews. So this is a really nice place to just kind of practice with your code. We're going to be making a rock, paper, scissors game in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And it's going to be, it's going to be fun. I hope we have some participation. But if you're shy or you just want to kind of code along, that's totally okay too. So let me get started. I'm on Replit. I'm already logged in, and I'm going to create a new HTML, CSS, JavaScript project, and I'll call it, intro, or we can just call it like, rock, paper, scissors. And I press enter. And it takes us to our sandbox. So as you can see, here's the HTML file, here's the JavaScript file, and here's the CSS file. So does anyone know, let me see if I can access the chat. Can I? Or I guess Corey will just help me. But yeah, does anyone have an idea of like what, I can see the chat, okay. What does HTML do in your own words? If you have an idea, please share it with us.
Paul, if you don't mind, if you could just make that a full screen just so everybody can see it.
Oh, okay.
It just gets a little, it's a little small when it's on the recording.
Okay. Now can I still see the chat though? Uh-oh. Oh no. How do I get out of this? We don't need this. Okay. I don't know if I can still see the chat. Oh, here we go. Okay. Yeah, so does anyone know what HTML does for web design? Okay. It basically places elements onto the page. So right here this is HTML code. HTML code has tags. So you can see we have the HTML tag, which encloses the entire file. We have the head tag, where we include our links to our CSS style sheet over here. See how this is a link tag? And it's just making sure that we're importing the style.css file into our HTML. So that's what line 8 is doing. As you can see on line 7, we have the title of our app. So I want to rename this. I'm going to say, rock, paper, scissors, game. So that's what will show up here when this is actually like published to the web. Let's see if it actually shows up. Let me try to make it show up here. Yeah, so you see how the title I typed in is now the title of the tab. So that's the title tag. We went over the link tag. Here's the body tag. The body is where the actual magic happens, where our content goes. So notice how anything that's between a less than sign and a greater than sign is called a tag. So that's the HTML lingo. So, and then it already pre-populated hello world inside of the body for us. So we should see hello world. When I run this, we should see hello world in this white space. So let's see, and there it is. We can put it in between an H1 tag. So H1, which stands for header 1. And now it'll be bigger because an H1 tag is the biggest kind of header. So when I run it, see how it became bigger? And then this script tag references, just like the link tag on line 8 referenced our style.css file so that we can style things with CSS. The script tag references our script.js file, which allows for logic to be used on our page. JavaScript is where we write logic. So when we click a button, something should happen. So JavaScript is like, in my opinion, like, right, I mean, not in my opinion, it's like, it's more powerful than HTML and CSS because it controls what happens when certain events take place on the web page. So, and you're going to get to see that today. So, so we have that. Something we can do is put the H1 in a div. So there's a lot of tags. So a div is short for like divider, and it's a standard tag used to like divide different places within the web page. So I'll create another div. So our first div will have like, we'll call it, welcome to rock, paper, scissors, and then underneath the header, we can use a P tag. So I'm just trying to teach you all these different tags. P is short for paragraph tag, which won't be as big of text as in H1, but it'll locate itself right beneath the header. So we'll say, remember, rock crushes scissors, paper covers rock, and scissors cuts paper. So we're just reminding people of how the game works. We're going to allow, so I'll go to the JavaScript file where I can write my pseudo code. So pseudo code is, let's write our pseudo code, which is plain English to describe what we want to accomplish in code. So I'm asking for some participation. If you care to chime in, what would a rock, paper, scissors game be consisting? Like, what would it consist of? How does a rock, paper, scissors game against a computer player, how would that work? How would it flow? Anybody? Anybody familiar with rock, paper, scissors? You can hear me, right, Corey?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. All right, here we go. Here we go. All right, Yesenia says the user would have to interact with the page. Yup. Ask for an input and then draw a random result from computer. Yeah, that's great, Sean. And then compare the results. Yeah, if else statement. Great, Aniko, definitely. So here's our pseudocode. So step one, right? User selects rock, paper, or scissors. Step two, user submits her selection. Step three, CPU generates random choice. Step four, user's selection is compared to CPUs and a winner is determined. So this is the logic that's going to go into our JS file, our JavaScript file. Let's first finish up with our HTML file. Typically, that's how it goes, y'all. So we have, at Flatiron, we like to use y'all, by the way, it's a fun little way to address everybody. So that's how it usually goes. We map out the page with HTML, we put things where we want them to be, and then we work on the logic, and then usually styling is the last thing that we do. So we may not get to too much styling, we won't be doing too much CSS today, because we want to address the more important issues, which is putting the things on the page and making sure the logic works. So, okay, let's see how this looks now. Welcome to Rock, Paper, Scissors. Remember, rock. So we have a little intro. Okay, now we created a second div, and in here we'll use like an H3, which counterintuitively is smaller than the H1. The H1 is the biggest header, and the H5 is the smallest header. So H3 is somewhere in between there. So we say, users selection, just like we said in our pseudocode. And then in our third div, we'll have another H3, CPUs selection. So let's see how it looks now. Okay, great. So we have our different dividing parts of our page. In the user selection, we're gonna use a select tag. Look at all the tags y'all have already learned. We've seen the head, the title, the link, the body, the div, H1, paragraph tag, div, H3, script tag. So now we have the select tag, which is a form of input. So we say select, and a select is essentially a dropdown. And the children of a select tag are called option tags. So we have the select tag and option. So guess what the options are? Rock, paper, and I don't have to put it on 3 lines. I can definitely condense it and just do it on 1 line, scissors. So, but for now it's okay. Oh, scissors. So let's check out how this select tag looks. There it is. There's our drop down. Rock, paper, scissors. Cool. We're in business. Now what I want to do is a very important concept in coding, web development. You want to assign IDs to the elements so that we can reference them in the JavaScript file. So I'm going to give this select tag an ID, right? Literally identification, ID, so I can identify it in the JavaScript file and do something with it. So yeah, I can write this and I can write a comment so that I'm not going too fast. Let me know if I'm going too fast. So we use the ID to reference the different tags in our JavaScript file. Okay, so this is a comment. So HTML comment looks like this. It has the less sign, exclamation point, dash, dash, and then it ends with dash, dash, greater than sign. Whereas in JavaScript, the comment is \asterisk asterisk backslash for a multi-line comment. If you just want a one-line comment, you just do backslash backslash. This is a one-line comment. So I don't mean to go back and forth, but just to show you these things. So we have our select tag. What is it? Here's a question to pose to y'all. What does it make sense to call the selection that the user makes? What ID would you want to give to the user's selection? Like, yeah, just think about it for a second. Yeah, that's a good one, Theodore. Yeah, user selection, right. Good job. I like it. Anybody else? This is one that's very subjective, because coding can be misinterpreted as, oh man, it's just math and logic. I don't know if I'm gonna be good at it. But there's actually so much creativity in coding, and that's what I love so much about it. So user selection, definitely. Anyone else? I just like to hear from more people, that's all. Okay, input. The only thing with giving the ID of input is that it's a very general ID, because we're going to use another input, or we may use other inputs, and then we won't know what input we're referring to if we just use the word input. So I'll just give it like 20 more seconds if anyone else wants to throw in a possible ID for our user selection. No pressure. Okay, cool. We'll go with Theodore's ID, user selection. Notice how I'm using what's called camel case. Camels have those humps, right, everybody? So the S is like the hump, and the S is the beginning of a new word. So when we have the beginning of a new word in an ID name or in a variable name, we capitalize it. So, so if this was like users first selection, see how the F is the first is a new word, so we have to capitalize the F. Selection is a new word, so we have to capitalize the S. So we're gonna stick with user selection, great ID. And then I can reference this now in the JavaScript file. And let's do that. Let's go ahead and show you the power of JavaScript. So I'm going to create a variable. So we create variables in JavaScript to reference HTML elements and make things happen with them. So this is how I do it. I use the word let, which just means that I'm about to declare a variable. So we say, let user selection equal document, and I'll explain this, document.get query, document.query selector. So I'll explain this line in a second, user selection. Great. Dot value. So let's look at this line. So our first JavaScript line. So we're creating a variable called user selection, and we're assigning it the value, see this value here, of the element that has the ID of user selection. So the hashtag, so query selector is selecting an element from HTML, and the hashtag means that we're selecting it based on ID. So remember that the ID of that select tag was user selection. So I have to use the hashtag to reference the ID. So I know that can look confusing right now, but this, when I print to the console, it may make more sense. So, okay. So console.log user selection. So console.log prints to this black area down here, the console, whatever we want to print to it. So I can literally do like console.log. Let me comment this out. I can do like console.log, like the number 3. And when I run this, see how it prints to the console, the number 3? Because again, our script tag, see on line 34, is referenced in our HTML file. And that means it's active. It's active and we can use the script file. So when I do console.log3, it's literally going to print log, right? Log to the console, the number 3. And that's what it did. Now what we want to do, our goal is to log rock, whatever the user selected, to the console. So rock, paper, or scissors. So this is going to be a little more tricky than just console logging the number 3, but we're going to have to try to figure it out. So before I uncomment it, I want to make sure. So we have to do with the select, so it has an ID, and then we want to do what do I want to do on change, right? So on change, we want to run a function. I know this is all like, it's a lot, but it'll make sense in the end. So on change, we want to run a function called user choice. So a function is just something that runs when we change the selection, right? On change, when I change my selection, I want to run some kind of function in JavaScript that's called user choice. So let's go back here and I'm going to write that function. So function user choice. And let's make sure that it's working. So let's console log user selection. So again, user selection is the value of whatever we have chosen from this select input. So let's try this out and see if it works. So run this, and then let's see when I say paper. Oh, it selected rock. Okay, that's strange. What if I do it again? Uh-oh. So, so maybe I have to put it, let me put it inside. Let's run this. So you see that, y'all? Pretty cool, huh? We're capturing the value of our selection by writing a function. Here's the function. Sorry, I don't mean to switch too quickly, but we're in the JavaScript file. We write a function called user choice. And what it does, it runs the function runs, as we would say, every time the user changes their choice from the dropdown. So, and we know that because we added this on change property. There's a lot of lingo, and only with time will you learn all the lingo, but you will get used to it because I've seen all kinds of, people from all different backgrounds, learning code. I've worked with many students, and it's just with practice, you'll start to pick up on the terminology. So we added this on change property to the select tag, meaning when we change the selection, we want to run this function, user choice. So when we change, okay, we run user choice. What does user choice do? It selects, using query selector, it selects the value of the element with user selection, with the ID of user selection, which is the select tag. The select tag has the ID of user selection. So that's what's happening. And then we're console logging on line 20. We're logging to the console the value of user selection. So, right, when I click scissors, it's scissors. When I click rock, so that's exactly what we want, right? Dynamic change. We want it to be dynamic as opposed to static, right? So yeah, I will pause there and see if anyone has any questions. Okay. Okay, Cindy saying, it seems like it won't print to the console twice if the user tries to choose rock twice. Oh, I know what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. Right. I'm on rock and then I'm choosing rock and it's not doing it again. That's correct. Yeah. So let's fix that. Let's try to fix that at least, because I wasn't planning for that. Let's put a blank option. That's a good observation, Cindy. So is this kind of what you're talking about? Like, let's have a blank option. Yeah, so let's see how this works now. So we have a blank option. Okay, now it's starting off blank, and then we pick rock. And then I think even if you pick the same one twice, it's going to be the same. So if I do rock again, it won't print rock. But if I go back to blank, okay, it prints blank. And then if I go back to rock, it does rock. So I don't know if there's a fix to that. You can't pick a selection twice in a row unless you have some sort of button to, unless you have like a button to cement the choice in, and then you hit the button again and it cements the choice in again. So yeah, yes. Cool. That great question. Yeah, Theodore, what is you have a question? Okay, the function in JS. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It allows us to select elements. Yeah, I'll write it. So query selector allows us to select elements to refer to elements that live on the HTML page so that we can make them interactive. Yeah, yes. It's a built-in function. Great job, Theodore. Great job. Yes. Dot query selector is a function itself. Yep. It is a built-in function that is part. Yes. Awesome. Great analysis. Awesome. Good stuff. Okay. So we have, yeah, does anyone else have a question? I know time is blowing by and there's so much to cover, but feel free to just throw a question out there even when I'm talking. That's fine. You want to see the HTML again? We do not have an if-else statement yet. What do you mean if-else statement? Anything you want to say about the HTML file, Nico? Okay, yeah, no problem. Great. Oh, okay. Maybe that's a question for Corey. Corey, Theodore's asking how he sees everyone else. How does he see everyone else's questions?
He has it listed to everybody, so everybody, and some people have been going to host and panelists. So if they're only going from host and panelists instead of to everyone, we won't be able to, not everyone will be able to see the questions in the chat. So that's that little blue button at the bottom. If you want to switch it from host and panelists to everyone, then everybody can chat together.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we have the user selection for now. It's capturing the selection. We want to have a button, right? That's kind of like part of the selection as well. So here's another tag. It's very self-explanatory. Button. We have a button tag. Submit. Right? We want the HTML. We want the button to have submit written on it. And when it runs, instead of on change, we do on click. How about that, right? Because we click buttons. We want to run make choice. I'm just naming it make choice. We want to run another function, make choice. So we can put the skeleton of that for now, function make choice. And it should capture the user selection, and it should compare it, right? So this should capture, again, pseudocode, right, y'all? This is plain English to describe what I want to do in code, what I want to write in code. So this should capture the user's choice and submit it for comparison against the CPU's choice. So let's have fun now and do the, actually, okay, so what we want to do is combine, I think, user choice and make choice. So yeah, we don't need user choice, I don't believe. So we're gonna take this. I'll copy it for now. I won't cut it. And so when it's clicked, when the button is clicked, so I'll show you the button. I'll run it. So here's our submit button. When the button is clicked, it's going to capture user selection, the value, and then we want to run CPU, make CPU choice from within another, right? This function is pretty interesting, right? We run one function and it takes us to another function. Make CPU choice with an argument of user selection. So I will explain what's going on. Function make CPU choice. Okay, so yeah, I'm just consolidating. I just wanted to show that when we were changing the selection, it was being captured. I just wanted to prove to you that when you make a new selection from the dropdown, the new selection is being captured. So we know that works. So now we're going to just like kind of comment this out so that it doesn't run anymore, and just use make choice. We could call it make user choice to be more. And then if I change it there, I have to change it here, because we don't want to compare. Yeah. Yes, it's reassigning the variable. So we don't want to compare our choice with the CPU's choice when I make a new selection. We only want to make the comparison when I click submit. So that's why I'm using an on click instead of the on change. So when I click the button, run this function called make user choice. Here's make user choice. It captures the user's choice, and it runs another function right after, which is make CPU choice, using the user's choice, it's called passing the user's choice to the CPU's choice. So this has to have, right, CPU, so user selection. So I'll explain it with a comment. So after capturing the user's selection, we are passing it to the CPU's selection where the two selections will be compared. So we can do the comparison within the make CPU choice. Now let's, so let me just console log. So we use console.log is used a lot for debugging. I want to make sure that the user's choice is being passed correctly to my second function, make CPU choice. So I'm going to console.log user selection. in the CPU choice function. So let me make sure that it's working. Okay, so when I run it, okay. So now no longer, user choice, what does it say? So we have our first error, everybody. Errors can be good. They help you to fix your code, and you're gonna have to get used to fixing them. So here we go. Reference error, user choice is not defined, and it tells me which line. It tells me line 20. Wait. User choice, where is it happening? I probably just, where is that happening? User choice is not defined. Make CPU choice, make user choice. I have to do a control F. Where is the user choice? So is it in the, is it in the HTML file? Yeah, I had to change the, I no longer need this, wait. Make user choice. We don't, okay, we don't need this anymore. So I'm just gonna get rid of this. Hopefully that fixed it. Let's see. Okay, so when I pick it, yeah, that fixed it. So now when I click submit, we want to see rock being logged to the console, and we do. When I go to paper and I click submit, we want to see paper. So that's why we changed, because we don't want the submission of the choice to be on change, right? When we make a new choice, we want the submission to happen when we click the button. So that's why we did that. That's why we changed to the new function, make user choice. Okay. So now we're in, yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Sean, thank you. So now we're going to do the random selection for the CPU. So we're here we go. So let's declare a variable, let random, ran CPU equals, and then we use a built-in JavaScript function called math.random. Math is a built-in class, and part of that class is .random. That's a method to create a random number. So math.random, and this can get tricky. Wait, I think I have to do math.round, math.random, and then like times 2, so that we only get 0, 1, and 2. So let's test this and see that we're getting. So what we could do is write a for loop, which runs as many times as we want, and make sure that we're getting as many. We're only getting 0, 1, and 2. Right? 0 can stand for rock, 1 can stand for paper, and 2 can stand for scissors, right? I is less, we'll run it 100 times, right? I plus plus, and we want to just see if ran CPU is being created the way we want it to be created. So I have to also paste this in here. And yeah, so we actually want to test this outside of the function. Okay. So yeah, look at that. We have 0, 1, and 2. You can go back and study math.round and math.random at another time, but basically math.random creates a decimal. It picks a number from 0 to 1, 0 inclusive, 1 exclusive. So literally 0 to 0.99999, and what we're doing is multiplying it by 2, right? And so if it was like, if math.random came out to be 0.9, then times 2 is 1.8, And then dot round rounds that to 2. So those are the times when we get 2. If math.random came out to be, let's say 0.4, as opposed to 0.9, if it was 0.4, then times 2, it's 0.8, and then math.round rounds it up to 1. And if finally, if math.random came out to be 0, because 0 is inclusive, then 0 times 2 is 0, and then math.round 0 is of course 0. So we have successfully created a random number generator for the CPU's choice. As you can see, we have 0, 1, and 2. We don't see any other numbers other than 0, 1, and 2. Don't worry about the for loop because we're not going to actually use it in our program, but it was a way for me to test, you're going to get access to this code after, so I'll just write this comment. This was used to test that we were getting the range of numbers, i.e. 0 to 2, that we were looking for the CPU's choice, because he only has 3 choices. So good stuff. So I can now use this because we know it works. I tested it, right? A lot of testing and coding, right? I tested it, and I now have a great random CPU number. Okay, great. So now here's where we get into what, let me scroll up, who was asking about the if else. Aniko was talking about if else statement. So this is where we get into the conditionals, right? We have our user selection, and we have our we have our CPU's random number. So we'll do, right. So CPU, 0 is rock, 1 is paper, and 2 is scissors. Ours, the CPU, the user's choice is explicit rock, paper, and scissors, right? As we can see here from the dropdown. Cool. So let's continue. Yeah, I can pause here. Does anyone have questions about how I created the CPU's choice, or anything about math.round or math.random, or we can pause here. Well, I'm sure we'll have time at the end. Okay, Theodore saying, so you will remove the loop at the bottom. Yeah, right. I was just using this loop to test that line 46 was working. Yeah. So I can comment it out. This loop, this loop was used to test. Yep. So I can comment it out. Okay, should let statement be inside function make CPU curly bracket? Sorry, let statement be inside function, make CPU choice. Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you, Aniko. Yep, I do need that. Appreciate it. Nice pickup. No problem, man. Yeah, Corey, do you want to say anything, or should I just address Mandeep?
Yeah, I just sent out an email to everybody that was registered for tonight's webinar. We had conflicting times listed. All of our webinars are from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. It was listed from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern. So just so everybody knows, this is recorded, and we will be sending out the recording within the next 48 hours. So if you cannot stay for any reason, it's fine. You will be getting an email within the next 2 business days.
Okay, thank you. And so there's not really a need to do like a holistic review. At the end, I can do that. But yeah, we can continue. So we have, thank you. We have our user selection. Okay, I've seen var, right, used instead of let in JavaScript. What's the difference? var is outdated. It is not used anymore by JavaScript developers. It works, you can still use it, but now we have let and const. So there's let for values that will change, and there's const. See, const is for constants. So if I have const x equals 5, I am not allowed to change the value of x after that. It's going to always be 5. So for here, so to play it safe, you want to use let. So great question, Cindy. Yeah, great question, Cindy. This is JavaScript, Mandeep. This is JavaScript, HTML, and CVS and CSS. RAND CPU is a number. Yep, it is. It is. Yes, Theodore's RAND CPU is a number. Cool. So now we're going to get to, time to write our conditional statements, comparing the user's choice with the CPU's random choice. So we write the if-else, which is in every programming language. It just will look a little bit different from programming language to programming language, but it's the same concept. So here we go. If we'll start with we're going to write, I think, how many possible combinations are there, right? So there's rock against rock, rock against paper, rock against scissors. There's, yeah, I should know that. I should know this just off the top of my head. I'm sorry. And then there's scissors against rock. And then, so because we want a custom message for each conditional, we're going to write 9, right? 3 times 3. We're going to write 9 different if-else statements. Here we go. If user selection equals rock and RAND CPU. So actually, right, what would be a better name for this? We called it user selection. So let's call it, CPU selection. But typically we don't want to start variable names with a capital letter. Actually, you never want to do that. So I'll do it like this, CPU selection. Cool. So that's much more consistent. So CPU selection. So if user selection is rock and CPU selection is 0, so they're both rock, then we want to say, we want to print to the console, it's a draw. Sorry, I'll do double quote, it's a draw. Boring, triple, okay. Oh yeah, no problem, Anderson. Attorney, oh, that's awesome. Cool, I'm glad you're enjoying it. So rock and 0 means that it's a draw. What else is a draw? So posing this question to y'all, what else is gonna just give us an output of draw? So we have one case of when it's a draw, when we have rock and rock. Yeah, good job, Theo. Can I call you Theo? Paper and rock, yep. If user, or so the double ampersand is and. So if we have rock and 0, or the double pipe sign is or, we have user selection triple equals scissors and CPU selection. So I believe we said, so rock, paper. So CPU selection is 2. So CPU selection equals 2. Close that with the parentheses. Or, so is it looking right? No, I need a parentheses here. Or user selection equals paper and CPU selection equals 1. We're gonna have the same output. It's a draw. Yeah, sorry about that, Vince. I know it started at 6 Eastern, but it will be recorded. I mean, it's being recorded, so you'll get a chance to review it. And I will review what we did at the end at 7:30 Eastern. So if we have rock and rock, scissors and scissors, paper and paper, it's a draw. Now I'm console.logging it. How about we actually put it on the page as well? So let me create, right? So we have user selection, CPU selection. How about a div at the bottom, right? So this is the HTML file for those who are just walking in. The HTML file is where you place the elements on the page. So this one is going to have a header of, hey, H3 stands for header 3. So it's going to have a header of outcome, right? So we'll give it, and then we'll have a paragraph tag within there underneath it. And then its ID will be outcome. And we'll say document dot query selector. Grab it by its ID. Remember, hashtag is grabbing it by its ID, hashtag outcome. And then we're going to set its inner HTML, which is a property of the element, right? Inner HTML is a property of the HTML element. Inner HTML, literally put this inside of the P tag. Put this text inside of it. We're going to say it's a draw. ... right? Because it's boring if it's a draw, right? So I don't want to run it yet. I don't want to play the game yet because I want to cover all of the possible outcomes. So let's continue. Sure. What would you like to talk about, Theo? Yeah. Yeah, okay, I can run it just so. Yeah. So yeah, and then CPU selection needs right, we're going to add images. That's where the CSS is going to come in. But I can't believe we're already at 7 o'clock. Oh my gosh, how time flies when you're having fun. Here we go. I'm going to try my best. This is you know, depends on how much experience you have, but building a rock, paper, scissors is like kind of between beginner and intermediate. Yeah. So let's continue. Okay. So we have, oh my God, I'm getting lost in like the, I have to spread this out. Okay. So if that, now we write else if, and then I'll copy this. It doesn't really go that much faster, but it's somewhat faster. Else if user selection equals rock and CPU selection equals 1, then it's rock versus paper. So then we should say, then we want to grab this and we want to say it's rock versus paper. The CPU has paper, so the CPU wins. So we want to say paper covers rock. CPU wins. Okay. And then we want to do another else if. I'm just going to burn through these and then I'll answer questions later. If user selection equals rock, we want to get all the outcomes, all the, what's it called? The, what's the math term, everybody? Combinations, right? We want to get all the combinations. If it's rock and CPU selection equals 2, then it's rock against scissors. So we win. So paste, rock crushes, you know, rock crushes scissors. You win, right? Then we do another else if. It actually doesn't take that much time. So now we're doing, we covered all of the cases where user is rock. So now we do if user selection equals scissors and CPU selection is a rock, then we do paste and we do rock crushes scissors, CPU wins. Else if, I can actually, yeah, so it will be somewhat faster to copy all of this, put it here, and do if user selection scissors, and it's so rock, paper, so 1. Scissors cuts paper, you win. And then what's left? We did, so now it's on to paper. And paper against rock. So rock covers paper. Sorry, paper covers rock. Paper covers rock. But we have the paper, so we win. You win. And paper versus scissors. The CPU wins. Scissors cuts paper. CPU wins. So this should be all of the possibilities. And right, what's more fun than testing, huh? I mean, writing the code is fun for sure. Testing can be fun. So let's see how our thing works, how our app works right now. So just want to make sure, yeah, this we don't need this, just comment it out. Just making sure, right, when we click submit, it's going to make the user choice, and then it's going to pass that choice to the make CPU function. Here's the make CPU choice function. Here's the user's choice. Here's the random, right? Creating a random CPU choice. And then we're comparing the choices. Cool. And then whatever outcome happens, we're putting it's a draw or rock, paper covers rock or this or that onto the underneath the outcome header. So let's try this out. Usually things don't work out the first time around, but I think this should. I'm sure there might be a typo or something, but let's check it out. So run it. Okay. So let's pick rock, submit. It's a draw. Okay. So I still have to, right. So that means the CPU selected rock. So I have to, yeah, I'm going to write another, go back to the HTML, CPU selection. We need a paragraph tag for the CPU selection. ID, right? We called this one user selection. So let's call this one CPU selection. And based on what comes out of the random generator on this line, we're going to put that underneath the CPU selection. So here we go. If CPU selection equals 0, then we want to do, let me grab this so I don't have to type it again. Document.query selector, CPU selection, inner HTML should say rock. And then let me just use this. Put the else here, else if. And then if it's 1, then we want paper to show. And finally the else. In any other case, we can do, oops. I can triple click, copy, paste, and make sure it lines up. And in any other case, which the only other case it'll be is the number 2, it'll say scissors. And now it'll look prettier. It'll say rock and then whatever the CPU's choice is, and then the outcome. So let me pick something else. Let's do scissors. Submit. The CPU selected paper. Scissors cuts paper. You win. Yay. How cool is that? Yeah, there you go, Brad. Permutations. Yep. How cool is that, y'all? This is yeah, man, deep. I know, right? Isn't that pretty cool? It's so funny, right? People usually comment that it's like, oh my God, all this code just to like create this. Isn't that so interesting? I mean, we put a lot of work into these web apps. I still haven't touched on the CSS yet, but yeah, let's definitely pause here and answer questions, and I can do a review before we go into the CSS, because the styling is not as important as you know, the logic and the not to dissuade people from learning CSS, but yeah. Yeah, pretty cool. How do you say your name? Kshatriya. Very nice. Sheena liked it. Kshatriya. Yeah, we're gonna style it a little bit. Yeah, any questions about like what we did with the conditionals, with the creating the random number on line 38? Okay, yeah. So Vince, yeah, let me take the time to review. Here we go. We started in the HTML file, and we noticed all the different tags. You have the HTML tag, which not encapsulates it, you know, captures it. It keeps everything inside of it to officially announce this, pronounce this file as an HTML file. Then we have the head tag, where we put our link to our CSS file, which we have not touched yet, but that's where we put our link tag to our CSS file, where we do our styling. We also have the title tag, which when I open this up in another tab, see how the title is now this? That's what the title does. So I can refresh this and it'll be updated. And let me go back. And we have the meta tags, which I didn't cover initially. The meta tags are just kind of defining like what like screen sizes this will really work on the best. And also like the character code, but you don't have to worry about that stuff. Next, we look at the body tag, where everything that's on the page goes in between the body tags. And we have an opening body tag and a closing body tag, just like we have an opening HTML tag and a closing HTML tag. We have our div tags, which are short for dividers. That's just to like divide our page up into different sections. We have the H1 tag, which is the biggest text header tag. It's a header tag and it's the biggest text. H1 is the biggest and H5 is the smallest. Then we have our P tag, which is a paragraph tag, which is just normal kind of text, right? This is like probably 12-point font, right? We have another div with the user selection, which is an H3 tag, right? It's kind of in the middle of the H1 and the H5. We have our select tag, which is the dropdown. And we have our option tags within the select tag. The option tags are the children of the select tag. They go inside of it. That's all that children really means, is that it goes inside of another tag. So the H3 is a child of the div, and the select tag is a child of the div. We gave the select tag an ID, an identification of user selection, so that we could use it in the JavaScript file and work our logic on it, right? So we give HTML elements IDs so that we can reference them in our JavaScript file, okay? And do things with them. So we have our blank option, right? The blank option's right here. It starts off like this. Then we have our rock option, our paper option, and our scissors option. As you can see from lines 21 to 28. Okay, I could make it more succinct and bring these up onto one line if I wanted to, because they don't really need to be on 3 separate lines, right? Just to condense our code. You know, and I can just hold shift here. Oh, sorry. So if I have my cursor here and I hold shift and click, then I can just go like that. So that looks a little bit nicer. And then we have our submit button, right? When we click, on click is an event. It's an event handler. And the event is make user choice. So, sorry, the event is click. So on click, so when we click the button, we want to run this make user choice function. And so when we click the button, we're going to run this function in the JavaScript file. And we'll get back to that. We're just going to finish with the HTML file. So that's what that's doing on line 26. When we click the button, right, the submit button right here, we want to run make user choice. And the parentheses just mean that make user choice is a function and we want to run it when we click the button. Okay. We have another div underneath the user selection called, you know, with the title of CPU selection, as you can see right here. And we gave it a paragraph tag with an ID of CPU selection so that when their random selection was made, right, using math.random, it would be put onto the page, right? So we have this CPU selection ID so that I can reference that ID in the JavaScript file and put the appropriate CPU choice, right, when the choice is made, when the random choice is generated. Okay, and then we have our final div. Okay, so Vince is saying, sorry, oh, there's a big, I don't see mechanisms here, so I have only done Python coding. Okay. Thanks, Mandeep. Yeah, they're kind of similar, but you would have to address the different syntax differences between Python and JavaScript. There are many syntax differences and some logic. Yeah. So, okay. And then Vince is saying, so on line 20, select ID equals user selection versus users selection. What do you mean, Vince? You actually just, okay. Great. Yeah. Let me know if you have another. Yeah. Line 18 is just the actual text user selection. Line 20, we're giving the select, the drop down, we're giving that an ID of user selection. So yeah. Okay. Now we're going to the CPU selection, right? We already went over this. And then whatever random generated number comes, 0 for rock. If it's 0, we're gonna put in the inner HTML, we're gonna put rock, right? This is the inner HTML of the paragraph tag, whatever is in here. If it's 0, we want to put rock. If it's 1, we want to put paper. And if it's 2, we want to put scissors. Okay. And then finally, the outcome. The outcome was based on our conditional. So now I can go over to the JavaScript file, the outcome, right? I'll start with the first one on line 53. Document.query selector outcome. We're selecting it by its ID because we're using the hashtag. Hashtag means we're selecting it by ID. Outcome, and then we're going to set its inner HTML to be it's a draw if we get user selection to be rock and the CPU is rock, or scissors, or paper. So let me just review the JavaScript file from the top. Remember, yeah, please excuse all of this pseudo code and comments. Let's just focus on the actual code that's running. Let's see what time we have. So we have 15 minutes. So make user choice, remember, when we click submit, we're going to run this function. Let's see what this function does. It declares user selection. It captures the user selection as the value of what is selected from this dropdown. So query selector, user selection. The element with the ID of user selection is, remember, the select tag. And we're selecting the value, dot value. We're selecting the value of it. So either rock, paper, or scissors. Okay. We're capturing that. And then we're passing that to another function called make CPU choice. So, okay, great. So what we do, we click submit. So let's say we selected rock. We click submit. User selection is now rock. We're calling make CPU choice and passing in rock. User selection right here is still rock. So now we're in make CPU choice. Now we have the CPU selection is a randomly generated number between 0 and 2. And like I said earlier, I would just brush up on this on your own. Math is a built-in JavaScript class that we use to do many things, math related. So this on line 40 CPU selection is, we created it such that it's only going to be 0, 1, or 2. Perfect, right? 0. And if it's 0, right? So let's look at this conditional right here. If the CPU selection is 0, then we're going to put right here, right? Like I was talking about before, in the CPU selection, we're going to put rock. If CPU selection was randomly generated to be 1, then we're going to put paper. And if it was randomly generated to be 2, then we're going to put scissors right here, right where CPU selection is located. Okay. And then finally, once we have the user's choice and the CPU's choice, now we can compare them, right? Yeah, like I said in this comment, time to write our conditional statements comparing the user's choice with the CPU's random choice. Yep. So if we have rock and 0, or scissors and 2, or paper and 1, it's a draw. And we want to communicate that onto the page. If it's rock and 1, then that means it's rock. We picked rock and the CPU picked paper. So paper covers rock, so the CPU wins. So we have a custom message for each. That's why we had to write all these else ifs, because we wanted a custom message for each situation. If we didn't want a custom message, if we just wanted to say you win or CPU wins or it's a draw, then we would only need 3 of these, right? We would only need 3, one if, an else if, and like an else. I think that's all we would need. So, but we want custom messages just to make it look cooler. So yeah, let me run it again. So run it. Let's try paper this time. Let's see what happens. Submit. CPU selected rock randomly. And we picked paper and they picked rock. So we won. Awesome. Pretty cool stuff. Let's do a little bit of styling. Styling can be very confusing. It's not as logic based as JavaScript, as you might imagine. But we can do some styling. So I can show you some things in CSS. Ready? So here's our okay, so they already gave us this. I'll really just get rid of this. I really don't need that. Let's see if it really changes anything. No, it's fine. So okay, so for the body, I want to give it notice the syntax, right? So for my body tag, it's referring to the tag, so the entire page. I want to give it a background color. So here's a property. Here's a CSS property, background color. Let's say orange. Okay, so let's see it change. There you go. Pretty cool. And then I want to change all the H3s. I want to change their font to be different than what is currently the font. So I can do H3 because it's a tag. I'll show you other CSS selectors really quick before we end. For all the H3s, I want the font family to be, let's just say veranda. and note, so catch a glimpse of what the font looks like now, and let's see if we can notice the difference in the font of these, right? The user selection, the CPU selection, and outcome. Let's see. Oh no, it didn't work. Is it font family? I have my example over here. My cheat sheet. Is it font family? Yeah, it is font family. Huh, interesting. Maybe it's already, is it already Veranda? You think it's lowercase? I'm not sure. Verdana. I know this worked on my other one. Interesting. Font family Veranda. We could try to do, oh, okay, yeah, style.css is being referred to. Yeah, is it, okay, Comic Sans, right? Yeah, I know. I wish. Okay, we could do sans serif. Should I try sans serif? Oh, it's Verdana, really? Oh, there we go. That worked. Cool. So sans serif changed the font. Oh, yeah, right, Sheena? Yep. Okay, and now I'll try Verdana. Let's see if that works. Nice, nice. Very cool. So we changed that. Now watch this. Watch the CSS selectors. So I have, okay. So now I want to just change the the color of the CPU selection. So ready? So I use the hashtag again for ID. So CPU selection. Is this right? Yeah, is it hashtag? I'm trying to remember. CPU selection, color is going to be, blue. So let's see if this works. So I run it, I pick my selection, scissors. Look at that. It's not as glaring. So I'll put like red so you can notice it better. And we can just make the font bigger. Font size, like 36. No, like 24 pixels. There you go, red and 24 pixels. So I was just showing you that this is a CSS selector. I selected using the hashtag again, just like we did for query selector, right? Let's see the time. We have 6 minutes. So pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool. Yeah, CSS can be a lot of fun. It's not my cup of tea, but it can be fun for sure. And it can be annoying, but that's okay. If you work hard enough at it, it gets better. Yeah, you want to add like an image, right? How would we center everything on the page? Good question, Cindy. Yeah, exactly, Theodore. I know that I know it would have been cool to put images. I can try to do that. Yeah, we don't have any time. So yeah, we wanted somebody wanted to center everything. So let's try to do that. So it will go in the body and we'll try to do text align center. There you go. How about that? Who was asking about that? Cindy, you like that, Cindy? It looks pretty nice. Yeah, I think it looks better. Yeah, it has to be a lot. Yep.